Gary Lynn Floyd, beautiful song, isn't it? Wouldn't be surprised. Yes, awesome. Well, today we're looking at the 15th and 16th verses of the Tao Te Ching, 2,500-year-old scripture by the sage Lao Tzu. And let me share with you the 15th verse. And also Wayne Dyer in his book, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, spent a whole year looking at all 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching. And so we're utilizing his book also, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. And this 15th verse, he labeled the chapter, Living an Unhurried Life. So I want to go ahead and quickly read this verse. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. One can only describe them vaguely by their appearance. Watchful, like men crossing a winter stream. Alert, like men aware of danger. Simple as uncarved wood. Hollow like caves. Yielding like ice about to melt. Amorphous like muddy water. But the muddiest water clears as it is stilled. And out of that stillness, life arises. He who keeps the Tao does not want to be full, but precisely because he is never full, he can remain like a hidden sprout and does not rush to early ripening. I'm sure you got that just like that, right? One of the things I think is interesting in this verse is he talks about the ancient masters. Now this is 2,500 years ago, right? He's talking about ancient masters 2,500 years ago. Now, I don't know about you, but I tend to think, when I think of masters, I think of, Jesus Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Krishna, Lao Tzu. I think of maybe Kuan Yin or some others, Yogananda, and others that we know about. But even more ancient than Lao Tzu, the ancient masters. I find that fascinating. Now, the yogis talk about there being an age of enlightened beings long time ago, which I don't claim to understand, but they believe things go in cycles, thousands of years of cycles where people reach this highest stage of enlightenment and then things start to go back down into darker, stuff, and then it starts all over again. So I just find that really curious, him talking about the ancient masters. And here he's describing some qualities of those ancient masters. Essentially, they're alert, they're watchful, they're present, and yet they're relaxed and they're unhurried and they're tuned into the place of stillness within them. Right? They're not in a cave necessarily, oblivious to anything. They're not walking down the street going, oh, excuse me, I'm a little bit of a rascal sometimes when I'm walking down the sidewalk because I'll see someone doing this, they're coming right at me, and I'll just keep walking. I'm curious to see what's going to happen, But a credit to the human being, we're able to see stuff even when we're not looking at it, right? Anyway, those ancient masters are watchful, alert, and yet relaxed and tuned into that inner stillness, that inner peace. And this chapter, Living an Unhurried Life, they look at this verse about the sprout that's hidden, and yet it does not rush to early ripening. It's hidden, but it doesn't rush. It's not trying to get out there and be a sprout. It trusts that life is going to unfold in its own time. And so Lao Tzu and Dr. Dyer are saying, you, as an expression, a part of the Tao, and me, we don't have to rush and struggle and strain and strive to be who we are and to achieve stuff and to make life happen. But when we're in tune with the Tao, which we are a natural expression of the Tao, things will unfold in divine order. Things will unfold and happen in a divine order. We don't have to rush and strain and struggle. Instead, we can be awake, we can be alert, we can be aware, and tune in to the stillness and allow and let and trust. An article that made a big difference to me many years ago was written by a Unity minister named Charles Roth. And Charles Roth wrote an article called Let It Happen. And he said that because this presence is everywhere present, the one presence and power that's in all and through all and expressing in you, and it's ever seeking to bless you, it's ever seeking to express more fully through you, you don't have to make, force, control, you can let it happen. Now, I've always loved that reminder. Let it happen. That's what Lao Tzu's saying. As a part of nature, as a part of the Tao, let it happen. Trust it. Let it unfold. Just like that little shoot. The masters are like simple as uncarved wood. Uncarved wood is a potential, right? It hasn't been shaped into anything. Tune in to that uncarved, that potential that's inside of us. Let it unfold. Let it come forth. Yielding like ice about to melt. The masters were in tune with their surroundings. They were present to their surroundings. They were yielding to the natural flow of nature and of the Tao. Jesus in the garden, not my will but thine be done. Thine be done, meaning let life unfold, let it express. Don't have to force it. So Wayne Dyer here gives us a couple of points. He says, this is very interesting, very challenging. Now, let's put it in perspective. Dr. Dyer, this book was written later in his life, right? It was one of his last books. And he said, spending a year with the Tao Te Ching changed his life. He found himself more peaceful. He found himself more relaxed. And it had a very positive influence on him. And the man had spoken to millions of people around the world for many, many years. He was one of the first self-help, motivational, inspirational, spiritual speakers. Many of you probably remember him from way back in the 70s when he was speaking. And so here he says, stop chasing your dreams. Allow them to come to you in perfect order with unquestioned timing. Slow down your frantic pace and practice being hollow like the cave and open to all possibilities like the uncarved wood. Make stillness a regular part of your daily practice. Imagine all that you'd like to experience in life and then let go. Trust the Tao. Those are three powerful words, aren't they? Trust the Tao. How does that feel when you think those words? Trust the Tao. Something in me goes, trust the Tao. Trust the Tao to work in divine perfection as it does with everything on the planet. That little shoot, all the things on the planet. You don't really, here's another one. You don't really need to rush or force anything. Be an observer and receiver rather than the pushy director of your life. Be an observer and receiver rather than the pushy director of your life. It is through this unhurried unfolding that you master your existence in the way of the Tao. I love that. How would our life be if we just lived what we just said? Relaxed, trusting, not trying to force anything, not trying to push everything, not struggling and striving with everything, but trusting and letting. Doesn't mean sitting on the couch eating bonbons, watching television all day. No, there's a place for that too. I reserve that right. You know, we're meant to, as Jesus said, I work and the Father works. We're meant to do our part, but we can do it with ease, with faith, with trust, aware, alert, relaxed, and enjoy. Enjoy the process. That's what he's saying here, I think. Now, I don't know about you, it's challenging to do that because there's a part of me, I think I was thinking about that recently, that some of my first ministers were like Robert Schuller, who was a big achiever. Any of y'all remember watching Robert Schuller in The Hour of Power? I mean, I think I got the message early on that, you know, it's about setting those dreams and goals, and with God all things are possible, and, you know, thinking about, achievements and all of that. Well, that's true, that's good, but if you look at Robert Schuller, you know, he did some amazing things, but his life looked a little stressful. I read a book about his life and Crystal Cathedral and so on, and it was a little stressful there toward the end. I don't know that that's, and I've also read self-help books. You know, I was a big Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, and I even met those people in person and studied with them to some degree and all that. And it was about goals and going after your dream and making it happen. And I think that's great to have willpower and focus. It helps. But at what cost? If you're in stress, if you're struggling, if you're striving and you get frustrated and you get disappointed and all that stuff, I don't know that it's worth it, because it's the journey along the way. Life is what's happening, as the Beatles said, while you're busy making other plans. Right? Yes. Life is now. Life is to be appreciated, enjoyed along the way. Sure, there's nothing wrong with having directions and goals to move in the direction of, but move in the direction with a sense of letting God be God, letting it unfold, letting it happen. I mean, I can see in my own life that things have happened without my conscious planning. Can you see that in your life? Yes. People have met partners or spouses without planning it. Or gotten jobs or careers they didn't even know they were going to end up in, or roles in a play or show or whatever. Trusting. So there's something else Dr. Dyer says. He says, get in the flow of life and allow yourself to proceed gently down its stream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. He says, give up struggling and start trusting in the wisdom of the Tao. What is yours will come to you when you aren't trying to push the river. Now the yogis have said, whatever comes of itself, let it come. And I used to think, that sounds a little too passive for me. Whatever comes of itself, let it come. I'm from the Western mind, right? The Western world. I ain't going to let it come. I'm going to go out there and make it come. I'm going to go out there and catch it. I'm going to make it happen. Well, maybe I've just gotten a little older now. I've gotten a little more experience to realize I don't want to spend my life in stress, making it happen. It ain't worth it. It's the journey. It's the difference that you make along the way. It's not the event. Look what I did, you know. It's the journey, I think. And so he's saying, what is yours will come to you when you aren't trying to push the river. And I've seen that happen in my own life. It just happens. Well, you know that old saying, when you're not looking, it shows up. We're not looking for that person, they show up. Sometimes that happens. I know when I came here, I didn't, I first came to New York City, I wasn't looking for that. I was in Northern California, living in a spiritual community, trying to make a speaking career happen in the area. I was speaking in churches, New Thought churches in California, and I was thinking about expanding into corporations and whatever. And then I got a call from Eric and Olga Butterworth saying, how would you like to be my associate in New York City? So almost overnight, I went from the foothills of Northern California to the streets of Manhattan. I didn't plan that. And then when that was over, I ended up in Hilton Head Island, a golfer's paradise. I didn't plan that. And then after 7 years of encouraging those poor golfers down there in their frustrations, I came back to New York City. I didn't plan that. So one of the things that Dr. Dyer encourages us to do, which I did, he said, take 10 minutes today and look at your life and sit quietly while thinking about all that you have and all that is flowing into your life on a divinely orchestrated timetable. I love that. It's really an interesting experience to do that. To look at your life and think about what you have and what is flowing into your life right now. That's good. That's divinely orchestrated. I think we can get so busy trying to go after what's missing and what we want and trying to fix what's not right that we don't take enough time to see what is right in our life, the good that is present around us. Live an unhurried life, trusting, letting God be God, as Meister Eckhart said, letting God be God in you, as you, letting the Tao, trusting it to unfold. There's a lot more we could say about that, but that's enough to live, isn't it? That's enough to transform our day-to-day. And then the 16th verse. Dyer's chapter is living with constancy. Become totally empty. Let your heart be at peace amidst the rush of worldly comings and goings. Observe how endings become beginnings. That's the key verse right there. Observe how endings become beginnings. Things flourish, each by each, only to return to the source, to what is and what is to be. To return to the root is to find peace. To find peace is to fulfill one's destiny. To fulfill one's destiny is to be constant. To know the constant is called insight. Not knowing this cycle leads to eternal disaster. Knowing the constant gives perspective. This perspective is impartial. Impartiality is the highest nobility. The highest nobility is divine. Being divine, you will be at one with the Tao. Being at one with the Tao is eternal. This way is everlasting, not endangered by physical death. This man was smart 2,500 years ago, wasn't he? It's like, wow. Wow. Beautiful writing, isn't it? Beautiful sayings. Essentially, everything, the only constant is change. Change. Heraclitus, the ancient Greek, said all is flux. All is change. All is change. That is one constant, always changing. And then the other constant is, as he says, things flourish each by each, only return to the source, to what is and what is to be. That source that's inside of us, the source of all life. Everything flourishes and then it returns to the source, where everything is to become and where everything returns. So we've got this constancy of the external world that's always changing, and we've got the constancy of the source at the center of our being that never changes. That's always there, always constant. And so what Lao Tzu and Dyer are telling us to be is accept the cycles of change that are always happening. Don't cling to one part of the cycle, because that will lead to eternal disaster. That reminds me of Revelation almost. You get into some parts of the Bible hearing about eternal hellfire, but it's very similar actually. Very similar. Eternal disaster. It's not talking about after you die. It's not talking about going to some place that's hot and heavy down below. No. We're talking about now. So Dr. Dyer is saying that, when a relationship ends, or when you get fired from a job, or you have an illness or pain, or someone in your life is struggling, or something, person dies, that's an ending. It's an ending. And every ending is a new beginning. Right? Yeah. How many of you know a relationship ended, a job ended, you felt sad or whatever? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were glad. Maybe you're like, well, good, I want to quit this anyway. I was tired of this. I was done with this relationship. I'm glad it's over, But one end, and then something happened that unfolded in a good way. Remember reading research many years ago where the research was you lose a job, frequently people go on to something better. Because if you're in a job that's not working, it's not working for the company and it's not working for you either, right? So better to find a place that will work. So there's always the cycle. That's part of the cycle of life, is what Lao Tzu is saying. Things end and there's a new beginning. Where is that phrase in here? I read it once. Observe how endings become beginnings. And one of the exercises for us to do is during the day to notice during your day how there are endings and new beginnings. Like we ended verse 15 and then we began verse 16. And when we end this message, then we begin something else. When the service is over, there's an ending, and then there's a beginning of the next part of our day. When you wake up, that's the ending of sleep and the beginning of your day. When you have breakfast and the end of that, you see what I mean? There are endings and beginnings throughout our everyday. And he says, be aware of those endings and beginnings. So take a day where you're noticing all the endings and beginnings in your day. That's the cycle of change. You can look at a whole life and say, well, we came from somewhere to be now here, and then we live on this planet for a while, and then we die. There's an ending. And as the sages and saints tell us, then there's a new beginning. And it happens in our everyday too. The problem is when we get attached to one part of the cycle. Oh, he has gone. She has died. Or this relationship is over. And then people get stuck on the ending. I'm not saying don't grieve. I'm not saying don't deny your humanness. I'm not saying don't feel. But don't get stuck on the ending. Because every ending, there's a new beginning. There's a new beginning. Notice the cycles. Because if we get stuck on one part of the cycle, then we get stuck in the emotional and don't move on into the next part of the cycle. Makes sense, right? So notice those changes that happen in your life. So he gives us a few clues here. He says, take time to be an impartial observer of life, particularly when an ending is causing despair. An impartial observer of life. Sort of standing back and acknowledging, okay, that's part of the cycle. Ending, something, beginning is happening. Understand that. And do it with your feelings too. You know, emotions, for example, sadness, okay. I notice the sadness, and the sadness is going to change. The sadness is going to end, and joy is going to come in the morning, right? As the scripture says, that it's going to shift. The feeling of despair is going to shift. It's going to end. There's going to be something new coming forth. Don't get stuck on the one. Let it flow. Let it cycle. Let it cycle. That's why I think it's important to acknowledge that you, as a person, as a consciousness, you're not your feelings. You're not your mind. You're not your body. Feelings are things that flow through you. Don't get stuck in it of, I am sad. No, you're not. You're not sad. You are consciousness who has feelings of sadness flowing through you. I'm depressed. No, you're not. You're a spiritual being. Notice what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but I always liked what Tony Robbins said about depression. He said, don't talk about I'm depressed. Don't tell people I'm depressed. Don't identify with that. Now, I know there's a lot to it, so, you know, people need medication and stuff like that. But I'm saying don't get stuck in the identification with anything, because you're a spiritual being having a human experience. You have feelings. You're not the feelings. So being in tune with the cycles of change that happening. He says, write these words and post them in a conspicuous place in your living environment. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. What is the challenge in your life right now? What is the situation? This too shall pass. It's going to pass. It's got to pass. Everything is change. Everything is flux. It's going to change. This too will pass. He says this phrase will remind you that change is the only constant in life. Everything you notice is in a cycle of coming and going. Everything. There are no exceptions. No exceptions. So can you see how being attuned with the cycles of change, knowing that everything is always changing, can help attune us to this flow of the Tao, because that's just the nature of life. So why be attached to one phase of the change? And then let it help us return to the source at the center of our being, where we can find peace and joy and love and light through the changes. That constancy of the presence. I'd like to close with this by Witter Benner. Witter Benner, I like that. Witter Benner. He poetically sums up the 15th verse, which was on living an unhurried life. He says it really well here. And it was written in the 40s. So put in woman for man, however you want. How can a man's life keep its course if he will not let it flow? Those who flow as life flows know they need no other force. They feel no wear. They feel no tear. They need no mending, no repair. Let's get still. We take a nice, long, cleansing, deep breath. And we acknowledge that right now we are in tune with the Tao. We are part of nature. And we acknowledge that we are in tune with the flow, with a divine order. We don't have to rush or push the river. We can relax and let the river flow. Yes, we do our part. We do the best we can in the moment to raise the moment. We do the best we can to better whatever situations are in front of us. But we do it with the awareness that we're in tune with the Tao. We let God be God in and through us and through whatever we're involved in. And we trust that whatever's needed is coming forth through us, to us, and in our life. And we find the inner joy and the inner peace that is our true nature. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you, Tao. Thank you, Spirit. And so it is. Amen. I want to thank Gary Lynn Floyd for being with us today, and also Nicole Fernandez Cafaro for their music sharing with us. They were great, weren't they? I hope you enjoyed them. And thank you all for coming in here in the space, and those of you watching online, we appreciate you being part of this consciousness building community that we are part of, raising consciousness, helping to bring forth global spiritual enlightenment. I want to remind you that in 2 to 5 minutes after the closing of this service, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything. So if you're in the space, I hope you got some questions. We're going to hand out some cards and pens right at the end of the service. You can write down a question, and we'll take it during the Ask Me Anything. And those of you online, you'll be able to post your questions in the chat box. So ask me anything in about 5 minutes following the conclusion of this service. So please join me now in saying the prayer for protection. Together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yea, God, hallelujah, namaste. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you.